Hey everyone, thanks for listening. Thanks for joining us. This is the Heretics Corner. I'm Obaid Omer, and with me are my co-hosts, Nuli, the Nullifidian,
Hello!
Nuli, and Dean, also known as the Red Murtad.
Hey guys.
And today we have Jenn Sutton on. Jenn is an ex-Mormon and an ex-Muslim, and we thought we'd have her on, talk about her story, and maybe compare being an apostate from both those faiths. Hey Jenn, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good.
Thanks for having me. Sorry, it was just very like, I'm good. It's gonna be a great show, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So yeah, Jenn. So I just had okay. So you grew up Mormon and then you became Muslim, but also while you were growing up, like you had a Muslim side to your family. Am I getting that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My Muslim side of the family is from Libya, and they were immigrants into America, like in the 70s. They were pretty, maybe like late 60s, so early 70s immigrants. So they were quite new to the country. My mom was a Mormon convert, and she left the home when I was like 8 and disappeared for like 10 years. But she didn't stay Mormon after she left. She became it's called the Urantia Society. It's like it's just a weird cult. She's just born for cults, I guess. So I spent summers with the Muslim side of the family. It was just kind of the thing that I looked forward to every summer, to go up and stay with the entire family. And so I was exposed to Islam and like Islamic teachings, but they were quite liberal, kind of just run-of-the-mill Sunnis. I mean, I saw my uncle pray. None of my aunties covered. My mom never covered her head. Like nobody ever. Just seemed really nice. Super nice.
I mean, was there any like conflicts in that? So you'd go there in the summer, but I mean, if religion came up, and like, okay, well, Christ not being divine, like, I mean, like stuff like that. Were there ever any arguments, or was that just something that didn't happen?
No, they didn't. We didn't really talk about religion very much. I don't remember having any kind of discussions, serious, deep, any kind of theological discussions. Mormons aren't real well read theologically either. They're pushed to not study except the actual books that the church puts out, kind of like the hadiths, and don't study anything else. Although that's unfair. In a lot of Islam, there is a push to study, philosophy and history, and in the Mormon church, it's really frowned upon. So there was a difference. No, there was no kind of. The only thing, okay, so the Mormon church teaches, and I've talked about this on other podcasts. The Mormon church teaches that the next best faith next to the Mormon church is Islam. The honor code, right?
Sorry.
The honor code at, there's at the Mormon universities, there's a thing called honor code, and all Mormons live by a kind of honor code, like chastity and morality. You have to be covered. That's why they have the special underwear that makes sure that you are covered. But that's fashioned after Sharia law, and they openly admit that. So my religious leaders, we believed in a modern day prophet. They taught us that Muhammad was a great man. So my uncle talking about how great Muhammad was yeah, he was a great man. My uncle called Jesus a prophet, just a wise, prophet of God, nothing special. And I didn't really think twice about it. It was like, yeah, he believes that. That's cool. Not a big deal. It never really set off any kind of radar. The polygamy set off some radar, but nothing else.
Sorry.
No. When you said the polygamy set you off, like, so, because I mean, Mormons you're also allowed to have multiple wives. Was that not a thing? Like, I'm not talking about your specific family, but more like in the community. Was that not a thing, like with the polygamy with the Mormons, or is that just
polygamy? In the Mormon Church split up in the, I think it was the early 1900s, and there was a war with the United States government over polygamy, and it was the Utah War. And so the fundamental parts of the church stayed polygamous, and the fundamental, or not the fundamental, but the mainstream Mormon Church abolished the practice of polygamy on earth. In heaven, there would be polygamy, but not on earth. So they went along with what the government told them. So the reason why polygamy kind of set off my red flags was because the Mormon Church, the one that my grandfather was a polygamist, and I grew up part of the time on a compound in Mexico with his plethora of wives, and then the other men and their plethora of wives. And I saw that the women were really badly mistreated. For me, it was normal to be a second-class citizen, and it was normal to be oppressed and not have a chance to have my own opinion or make my own decisions, really, like life decisions even. Who you marry was chosen for you, just like in Islam. So that when I started studying Islam, I was a teenager, and I started heavily studying Islam, and I read that polygamy was also allowed. I didn't even know in my family, I don't know of any polygamists. I'm sure there are somewhere along the lines, but it's just not a thing. Not like the Pakistani Deobandis that I married into that family. But so the fact that those two kind of believed in polygamy, when I say it set off like red flags, that was for Mormonism. Like, it made me disbelieve in the Mormon Church even more, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it does make sense.
Okay. Sometimes I have a hard time. I switch between the two, and it's difficult to explain things sometimes. Maybe.
Yeah.
No, I think also, like, do you think it could have also potentially been like you seeing in Mormonism or like polygamous marriages in Mormonism, where you just said, women are treated like shit and whatever, and then you have in Islam where it's like, oh, you can have 4 wives, but you have to treat them equally and you have to love them equally. Do you think that maybe potentially had a bit of a factor into that?
That was all of it. As a matter of fact, it was a positive to me that Islam limited it to 4 wives. I thought that was a gift from God, because my grandfather had like 15 wives. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, there was no
Jesus.
limit. So I'm like, this is amazing. This is empowerment.
Yeah. But that being said, Muhammad himself had like 9 wives at the minimum, right?
Yeah, but he was the prophet. It's like Joseph Smith.
It's different.
Yeah, special rules.
Is it, or is he the example who is supposed to set the standard and failed to because?
Well, he's supposed to. You're just not supposed to do exactly like he did.
Do as I say, not as I do.
One of my ancestors had 100 wives, like, no joke.
Oh, Jesus. Sorry. Wow.
Yeah.
Right?
Could you imagine the amount of like Nurofen or like Panadol or whatever you call it, ibuprofen or codeine he'd need to take to deal with all of those wives, though?
I couldn't even imagine.
Yeah.
So for him, the 72 virgins would have been a downgrade.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
People think like, oh my gosh, think about it, 72 virgins, in heaven. I'm like, not really a big deal,
So you read that.
I guess that's why you got.
Sorry. So you read that in the Quran. You're like, oh my God, equality or better equality for women. Yeah. Is that like is that one of the main? That was one of your main things. Was there anything else that really kind of made you more steer towards Islam, or?
I liked the fact that women were protected by being hidden away. I liked Purdah. I really did. I felt I had been hurt so much and abused and used by men. I think that to me was one of the biggest things that pushed me towards it.
Yeah. Do you think that's could be a reason why many like Western women convert to Islam, because of how they potentially special? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. I agree.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Sorry, Obaid, about interrupting you. I was just like, I have questions. I need to answer them.
Oh no, I was just going to make a flippant comment about that's probably why the Mormons need a planet of their own after they die for all their wives after the afterlife.
They teach that if there's three there's heaven for everyone, but there's three, they call it 3 degrees of glory, and it's celestial, telestial, and terrestrial kingdom. And the most pious and the ones that pay tithing and go to the temple, when you go to the temple, you have secret special ceremonies you do to it's like an eternal family. So you get sealed to each other for eternity. So those people get their own planet, and the man gets as many wives as he wants. As many. Doesn't matter. It could be thousands if he wanted.
Wow.
All right.
But what do the
Very
women
empowering.
get?
And yeah, in Islam, it's what, 72 virgins? Whatever.
Yeah, but that's also but in Islam as well. Like I'm just like looking at some of the parallels because you're talking about like the different levels in Mormonism, but same thing in Islam. You talk about different layers of heaven, right? So if you died under 15, you would go to heaven, but you would go to a lower layer of heaven. If you actually martyred yourself, you'd go to a higher level of heaven. Like, so did you?
Where you get the virgin.
When you saw like, yeah, but when you
And
saw
you fly
those
around in green
comparisons-
birds.
Right.
I'd never heard that. But yeah, so did you keep seeing those comparisons, or was it just like the
I didn't see those comparisons until after I left everything.
okay?
I never once did I think that the two. It's amazing to me the similarities now looking back on it, and it makes sense that there were so many positive things written about Muhammad and Islam about from the founding prophets of the Mormon Church. Even up until present day, they have very positive things to say about Islam and Muhammad. Joseph Smith also fashioned a lot of his stories. He was a plagiarist, so he wasn't the writer of the Book of Mormon. There was a lot of different people who wrote it. It was a big con, but he claimed the ownership of the actual book and the person who wrote it. So he wrote it based off of the Quran. He was a very big fan of, obviously, the Quran and Islam and some hadith. I think Al-Bukhari is one. It's really fascinating.
So I've met a few Mormons who, for some reason, like especially when I was a conservative Muslim, they took a real liking to my religiosity, sort of, and they were really interested in having sort of conversations about religion. And I did get the feeling that for some reason they just had this interest in Islam for some reason.
Or a sense of brotherhood in a way, perhaps.
Yeah, like a connection that I didn't really understand, but they seem to see.
Well, it's the modesty culture is a big thing. Mormons are also taught to do with the modesty culture that we literally were told it's better to die than lose your virtue. So if you're going to be raped, it's better that you die trying not to be raped than come home having been raped. Literally. And you know how they have that thing with the unwrapped lollipop and the wrapped lollipop you see with the hijab? Same thing in the Mormon Church. We had lessons in our girl classes that had a licked cupcake. So they bring in a cupcake and say, doesn't this look delicious? They'd lick it and then they'd pass it around and say, now who wants it? Nobody wants it, right? Well, you're a licked cupcake if you let a boy touch you.
Jeez. Yeah, that's pretty much similar to what, again, like you said, like that in Islam and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that okay.
Yeah, it's
but
interesting
I mean, I'm not. Sorry.
No, go ahead. No.
I was going to say I'm not trying to make a defense of either faith, but I mean, if you look at some of the when TV first came out in North America, right? So in like when it started getting more and more popular, so in like the 50s and stuff, the public service type announcements they would put out on how the family should be, this and that, they would say stuff like that to. When they were giving like messages to kids to like, okay, you want to keep yourself pure, you want to keep yourself safe, you're not going to be clean if you have sex. So
that makes a lot of sense though, because the Mormon Church is very American centric and especially fashioned after not the 1950s, but like that kind of Protestant kind. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like a
Yeah,
very
yeah.
Americana kind of culture kind of thing.
There's
Yeah.
a man's place, a woman's place, a girl's
Yeah.
virtue, and yeah.
Yeah.
So what then?
No, but I mean, it could also be.
Sorry, go ahead, Obaid.
Sorry, I was just going to say it could also be that in the 50s, again, you know, the U.S. was a lot more religious than it is now.
Yeah.
And you still had, you know, you didn't have the counterculture movement of the 60s or anything come out yet. And so it was still very conservative, you know, still a very Christian country, for lack of a better word, even though they were,
They
you know,
still
it
were
was secular, right?
harming homosexuals too. I mean, there were still lynchings of homosexuals back then, and on top of different races. But what I'm saying is the Mormon church hasn't moved on from that.
Yes.
They're still stuck in the 50s and or beyond before that.
Yeah.
Like Islam.
So, you know, you've read the Quran and you've done whatever amount of research you've done. So what actually made you turn around and be like, okay, well, I'm going to become a Muslim now?
My a conversation with my uncle about women in the United States. My growing up, I had a specific uncle who passed away a couple years ago from cancer, but he was fun. He was more of a father to me than my own father. My father was always high. It was marijuana, so it wasn't that bad, but he was working all the time and he just wasn't available. So my uncle became like a father in situ, really. So he would tell me all the time that he wished that he could send me to Libya to grow up, because I wouldn't be raised the way American girls are raised and girls in the West. He just didn't like it. And I watched all of my cousins and you know, extended family be protected from the things that I wasn't protected from, like the abuse and the domestic violence and just not having a safety net at all. And so we just had a conversation again about that, and he knew that I had been researching it and looking into it a lot, and he just told me that in Islam I would never be alone and I would always be protected, and I bought it. I don't know if he really believed it or not. He was a good guy, though. He was a very good man, so I think he really believed that genuinely. But then part of me, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, technically, I guess he was right. I mean, prisoners are protected and they're never alone. So
that's true. I mean,
yeah.
I was going to be hidden away and stuff. I mean, what I married into was completely different than how I was raised. And to the point that even his family, even the more kind of fundamentalists, like his mom was a little more conservative and fundamentalist because she was still living in Libya, and she would come over and she was like, whoa, girlfriend, you need to slow it down. This is a little extreme. So it was just, but that was what I married into. And it kind of took over really quickly before I realized.
Yeah, well, yeah, so I'm like, just listening to something like that, I guess what stands out to me is the problem of, you know, there's bad people in the world, and what a system like the Islamic system does is it gives power to the males for no particular reason over women in such a way that bad men just have to have influence over some group of women. So like, it's like, does that make any sense? I'm kind of fumbling over my words, but you know, there's bad men who exist in every society. Some like in Islamic societies get to have way more power than they would in like sort of a natural system.
And that's kind of like the way the Mormon church is set up, because like even ecclesiastically, women don't have any power. Men have what's called the priesthood, which is given from God, and women are denied this. So they have no autonomy, essentially. And at the end of the day, every decision is made by a man. So
yeah. So you became Muslim, and was it after you met was it your ex-husband?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So is it? Yeah, and yeah, so you became Muslim, and then what was it? And you're just kind of like, I guess we could say you're typical Muslim, or did you kind of go extreme prior to meeting your ex-husband, or
That
what
wasn't
happened then?
extreme at all before I met him. I mean, I was still kind of new. I was very young still. But I really enjoyed my life as a Muslim. I spent some time in parts of the West, on the West Coast of America, with really great Islamic communities, doctors. I'd go to these pool parties up in the hills where the rich people were. Everybody was super nice, completely different society. This is okay. So almost two different Islamic societies exist where I live right now, and it was in the same area because I moved back home when I ran away. But so there's the ones that have it's everywhere. You know, the ones that have integrated and the ones that haven't integrated, and the ones that haven't, they're a lot more extreme. So I was introduced to this amazing community, but then when I came back, I was still really extreme. So I found the extremist community in the same area.
Yeah.
So had that kind of in the process of trying to get out, but I wasn't. I was already extreme to begin with, if that makes sense. Like I did not like gay people. I did not think that people. I didn't think mixed races were bad, but I was against Black people marrying white people. It completely does not make any sense, but that's what the Mormon Church taught. Yeah. But it didn't matter if it was like a brown person and a white person. So, that makes sense, right? There's a difference. So I was already I was ripe for it. I was already a fundamentalist. It was just, I just needed something to swoop in and kind of just mold me into a monster.
So we went, so you got involved in the Muslim community. I like to call them your light Muslims, LITE. So you got involved with them. Did you meet your ex-husband through them, and then move overseas, or like how did you end up in the extremist community? Because you keep saying you when you came back.
I met my ex-husband online. It was an arranged marriage. I had already been married one time.
Yep.
And I had lost my son. And
I'm so
my
sorry.
ex. It was just awful. I was really just distraught. So it was kind of like a dating kind of, I don't know. It was a weird site for Muslim people. I don't even remember back then. It was really it was weird. It was under kind of a chatty chat room kind of thing that wasn't set up for that, but it became that, if that makes sense.
Of course.
So I didn't know that he was very extreme at all. He didn't, he everything that I talked about to do with Islam, he agreed with. He never said it was any different. He talked about how westernized his family was, how none of his sisters covered their head, that, how they thought that hijab was kind of old fashioned. And I mean, he sold me on the same Islam that I knew. And I thought it was exactly the same. I spent a week with him, and then I married him. And I had only known him for, I don't know, 6 months, maybe. I mean, we only communicated online. Yeah. And, but it was 1 week that I spent with him. And then I moved overseas to be with him.
Wow.
And I didn't know what I was getting into.
So do you mind saying where you moved to?
To Scotland.
Okay.
Initially.
I thought you were going to be like, I moved to the deserts of Arabia.
We wound up moving all over. We wound up moving. I spent time in like Dubai, Qatar, and Saudi. But I spent most time on the Aramco compound. So it wasn't, it's not really. Yeah. It's like mini America.
Just
what?
Just when you got married and converted to Islam, when you converted to Islam and got married, did your Mormon family cut you off, or because there was already a connection with Islam within your family, did they accept it?
No, they accepted it. I did not get cut off until I left. Officially, I left at the Mormon. I didn't. Okay, this is hard to explain. When you, it's kind of like Islam. When you're born a Mormon, you're Mormon forever, and you can't just apostatize. I mean, if you apostatize, you are shunned. You're broken off from the family for eternity. It's such a big deal. You become an enemy of the church and an anti-Mormon. Sounds very familiar. And the penalty used to be death. And we used to teach that the penalty was death. It's called blood atonement. So when I became a Muslim, I didn't speak out against the Mormon church. So they didn't shun me then. It was when I started speaking out against the Mormon church that I was shunned. And they broke off contact with me. I've lost almost every single member of my family. I don't have any contact with any of them. Maybe like 2 people.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but is it I always get not confused, but like, is it Mormons the ones that you have to send the official letter requesting leave?
Yes,
or is that okay? Yes. All right, cool. Because I was like, I couldn't remember if it was Jehovah's Witness or Mormons, because I've seen a few people on Tumblr posting their letters of rejection, and I was like, what?
I think it's also Catholics.
That wouldn't surprise me. I just know that because the Mormon church, they will continue to hound you until you send in the request. They won't leave you alone.
Yeah, but with the Catholics, it's not just a request as well. Like there's a whole ceremony. Like it's called there's even a movie about it called Bell, Book, and Candle, and it's so you strike the bell, you close the book, and you blow out the candle, and then you become excommunicated. So you have to do something as a Catholic to get excommunicated. I think announcing that you've converted to another faith or you've publicly denouncing it like that would do it, but I don't think there's anything like where a letter you have to send in with the Catholics. I could be wrong about that though.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah,
well, with the whole marriage thing, and you said you were rushed into it, I was thinking, do you think that was because of your like sort of Islamic background or your Mormon background?
Both, because it was quite common in the fundamental part of my family. It was quite common to have either marriages that were rushed into or arranged.
Okay.
So and to get married very young was quite common. The first time I was 16, the first time I got married. My grandmother was 15. Most of my sisters-in-laws were like 15, 16 when they got married. So it was just very common.
Okay. Basically child marriages.
Yes. Yeah, because like I know family members who basically got married within a couple of days of like starting to see someone. Essentially, like they like someone, and okay, how do you get into a relationship with them? You marry them. That's like dating 101 in the Islamic community, right?
So crazy.
Yeah.
Some of them work though, you see them. Some of them you see they're in love, work, and not a lot though.
Well, so a lot of them, yeah.
Oh, sorry. So you moved to Scotland. You're with your new hubby. Was it you who ended up going, like, as in embracing the extreme, or was it him pushing it on you? Like, kind of what happened there? And like, if you don't mind saying, like, how extreme do you go? I have a ranking system from Zayn Malik to ISIS. So anywhere on that ranking system, where do you think you ended up?
Not quite ISIS. I was pretty supportive. Well, I celebrated on 9/11. If that's, I mean, that's pretty extreme. I mean, I thought it's not that I was super happy that it happened, but if Allah hadn't meant it to happen, it wouldn't have happened. And he was punishing them for something. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened. Yeah. So am I going to go against Allah's will? No.
So we have a new rating now. It's not quite ISIS.
Not quite ISIS. I didn't kill anybody.
Taliban light.
Yeah, Taliban light. I was Taliban light.
Yeah.
My husband came from a very extreme family. Okay, his story it's very complicated too, because he had parents, one from India, one from Pakistan, before the partition though. So pre-partition, they were both born. And then so they were first love marriage in like 10 generations. They met at university, they were doctors. So they fell in love and they got married, and the families hated each other. The mom's side of the family from India, very extreme, but not, when I say extreme.
Maybe in a cultural reference?
Yeah. Let's see. The women wore half the family wore niqab.
Okay.
but it wasn't forced, and they didn't practice FGM, but the other side of the family did, and the other side of the family, they were from a lot of much poorer as well, villages, very tribal, very bad people, murderers. I didn't know this at the time, but they just weren't good people. So the father had passed away when my ex was very young, so it was just the women, and the women didn't have the mom kind of went crazy and kind of extreme. So he had this fight, because once his father died, he was separated from his father's side of the family. I come into the picture and he starts to get to know that side of the family. We were radicalized at the same time.
Okay.
So it kind of happened. I started taking some prayer classes with some wives of some people from the Muslim Brotherhood. I didn't know. They were really nice.
They are always nice.
Oh, they're so welcoming and so sweet, and they make amazing
psychopaths
food.
Always have like, they're really polite.
But so I'm taking these prayer classes.
So basically, you're saying Canada's a country of psychopaths.
Yes.
So it's kind of like we both got introduced and radicalized within a 6-month period. And it was when we went over to, it started in the UK, and then we went over to Pakistan to visit family, and it just kind of, it was a really weird time. It was a very, very strange time for me.
How long were you in Pakistan
I was
for?
like a princess. 2 years, but I was treated like a princess, off and on. But it was a total of 2 years over.
You're white people.
I'm super, super. Yes. I was new. I was a convert. I was a shiny thing and pretty. And they were like, "Ooh, can I touch you?" Oh, interesting. I'd have women touch my skin. It was the weirdest thing.
So yeah, that happened when I went to Somalia. Weird. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. Well, so your husband, was he Sufi? What was he?
Deobandi.
So I've heard of that, but like what
are they?
It's a revival cult. They follow I can't even remember the guy's name now. Do you remember Obaid?
Are they the guys who have a photo of their Hanafi, and they sort of revere him a bit too much?
No,
the Wali. What's his name? Wala. I can't remember his name. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's like a revival kind of culty kind of.
It's primarily Hanafi Islam.
Really?
Yeah. So it's it's kind of like the Mormonism of Islam, kind of.
Okay, so do they have is it part of the mainstream though?
Well, they're considered Sunni, and they're 40 or 50% of all Desi Muslims in the UK. I know that.
Oh, really?
They're very, very big. The mosque that I was married in is a Deobandi mosque.
Okay.
And it's the biggest mosque in the UK, I think.
I think also there's also a few in South Africa as well.
Oh, really?
Deobandis, yeah. It's quite interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think it's after you leave Islam when you realize how many different kinds of Muslims there are out there as well. And I think also I think they also I think the Tablighis are kind of an offshoot of them, their proselytizing branch or something, I think. Maybe. Tablighi Jama'ah.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. We know Tablighis.
Do you guys
you've visited Pakistan, you're pretty much almost ISIS, not quite ISIS. And obviously you've had your kids in this time, and so you said you came back. So obviously you and your ex-husband are obviously not together now. So you've come back. Was there a reason besides maybe was it a theological reason, the separation, or was it you starting to have doubts, or was it just something personal? You don't have to go into detail if you don't want to.
I left before I left Islam. I left him.
Okay.
And because he had taken the reason why we went to Pakistan several times. The first time it was to visit. We stayed for 6 months. and came back because I had fallen pregnant, and I didn't want to have a baby in Pakistan. No offense.
Smart choice.
To any Pakistanis. So, but after my daughter was born, he kind of went really crazy, like very, very controlling. And before that, he was really nice, but just everything I did, there was cameras up in my house. He had keyloggers. My phone calls were recorded. When I said that I was controlled, I was given enough money to go to one shop at a time and buy enough stuff just to buy the stuff at that one shop. And that's it. I had no other money. I worked, but all my money went into his accounts. And we traveled a lot. We went all over the Middle East. We stayed different places, mostly for like long holidays. He worked in finance, so he had long periods of time where he didn't have to work. But I continued to work because it was my only outlet.
Freedom.
Like he let me work. Yeah. And so, and I felt like I was accomplishing something. But he was very abusive. He progressively got more and more abusive as time went on. And he took my kids because I questioned Islam one time. And after that, he took the kids. And then I had to go get them. That was going back to Pakistan again and staying for a long time. Because I came home from work and he was gone with my kids. And I didn't think I'd ever get them back.
Wow, that's crazy.
Terrifying.
So I had to fake for so many years. I had to fake having a marriage, and with a man I didn't love, that I hated, I detested. Still wanting to be a Muslim, conflicted, making excuses for the abuse, thinking maybe I needed to just. Allah knew that I didn't love him. It was my fault. He knew it. I deserved it. I should have been better. I should have made better choice. All those things that go through your head when someone's hurting you. But he hurt me so bad that I couldn't. It took a long time to recover physically. He hurt me, and he violated me in ways that no one should ever violate a person. And it was that I had to go. So I convinced him to let me take the kids on holiday. And when we got to America, I called him and said that we weren't coming back. He was so mad. I was so scared. I remember shaking.
Of course.
I remember the phone call and him calling me a fucking whore. And I was there just wanting to just fuck men. That's all I wanted to do. And he just knew I was a fucking whore. All white women are fucking whores. It was just awful. But he got over it.
I often say it, for like Muslims, and when you do finally take that step to leave, you're going against so much conditioning you've been taught to. But for you as well, it's not just you going like against what you've been, like you're religious, you've been taught, but that was your entire life. Because as Mormon women don't leave their husbands, Muslim women don't leave their husbands. So the balls it takes, I applaud you.
I didn't have, thank you. I didn't have any, I had to call my brother. I remember I asked one of my older brothers for help. I asked for, he set us up with an apartment and he bought me a car. It was like a $800 car. It barely worked, but it was a car and it didn't matter. He paid the deposit for the apartment and he set me up with like a receptionist position so that I had a nursing degree, but I had to do stuff to get it to switch over to the States. So he set me up with like a receptionist position with one of his friends. And I made, I don't know, like $9 an hour or something, but it was enough that I could claim independence. Yeah. And for the first time, like money that I was earning was going to me. It was a crazy feeling. I also didn't know how to manage money. It was terrible. Oh my gosh. Nobody ever taught me how to be a grown-up.
That's a very common thing as well. I think a lot of people who leave religions are really experienced. I like to say we go through a phase of learning how to adult because we're not taught how to adult. Yes. But, yeah.
So when I left,
when you get, sorry, go ahead.
No, when I left,
when you said you can't. Okay. We're at crops purposes here.
Obaid, right. Just ask your question.
Yeah, just ask it, buddy.
When you said you came back and your brother helped you out, so I was going to ask that, like, once you came back and left Islam, did your Mormon family side of the family like try to reconnect to bring you back into that fold, or were you just completely shut off except for a couple of people?
It was a little bit of both. That's actually what I was going to talk about, because when I was still quite, I didn't realize, speaking to people that have known me since I left, and even though it hasn't been like, it's not even been 9 years now, maybe 8 years. The difference between me then and me now, it's like night and day. I was just talking to a friend of mine the other day that kind of has seen me through this entire transformation, and said, I remember when you first ate bacon for the first time, and how like that was your show of defiance, because my ex was visiting and I made my kids eat bacon in front of him. And he was anyway, that's a whole other story. He comes downstairs and my son's at the table eating bacon. And he's like, "What the fuck?" I was like, What are you going to do about it?"
Yeah.
Oh, that was great. Oh, it felt so good. Oh, so good. Anyway, I had forgotten about that. So I was not accepted by a lot of the Mormon side of the family. And my family haven't, there's some families where part of them have left the church. Officially, a lot of them are part of what they call Jack Mormons. So they're still Mormon in name, Muslim in name only, yep. Mormon in name only. And I had some of those in my family, and they were pretty, and my brother was one. He drank alcohol and smoked and had sex before marriage and stuff like that. He was a baddie. So he's the one who helped me out, but it wasn't until I properly denounced the Mormon church that the rest just kind of, I was still on Facebook. I remember, I was still on Facebook when I announced it, and then I closed my Facebook account down. And like within seconds, like I was getting calls on my phone and concerned messages like, what do you mean you left the church? What are you talking about? Like, and then nobody would talk to me at all. Friends, like people I had reconnected with from my childhood, wouldn't talk to me anymore. Oh, it's crazy.
That would have been isolating.
It was a very lonely time. I was suicidal. I was self-harming then. I started cutting then. It was really bad.
Yeah, it's definitely a factor. Like, I've mentioned it, and this show is all about Jenn, but that sense of loneliness that I encountered when I left home, and I had no one in touch, and it was 5 years where I didn't speak to anybody about anything. I had like no friends, nothing, because I had just within the first few years of me leaving, it was that isolation. I didn't want to connect with anyone because I didn't want to lose those people again if they found out. Is that something that happened similar with you?
Mm-hmm. I was terrified of, and I kept up pretenses for a long time too because of it. Because I was scared of being alone. I was scared of being rejected again. Rejection used to be so hard. I don't care anymore, but I'm just older now and I have thicker skin. But it stings.
If we could just go back just a little bit, what were some maybe perhaps core things that actually made you be like, nah, Islam's full of shit? Like, was it just like one thing or two things, or was it a gradual thing where you woke up and you're like, oh my God, I can't live like this, I can't do this anymore?
I didn't even walk away from Islam entirely because I found inconsistencies with the story. It wasn't because I found out anything crazy. I left because I stopped believing in God. I mean, I just, it was after I stopped believing in God that I started studying with a more open mind, and I was horrified. I don't even know how to explain it. The process that I had to go through because I had such disgusting beliefs, and I had so much hate, and as much as I wanted my brother dead for being gay. If my daughter had come out at the time, I would have forced her to get married. I mean, I had my suspicions that maybe she was gay. So we talked about sending her to Pakistan to get married at 14 or 15 to make sure that, she wouldn't be gay, because, a good marriage is going to cure that, right? Yeah. I was not a good person. I had not evolved or developed or grown at all. So it was opening my eyes and studying and seeing who I was for the monster that I was, and looking in the mirror and really accepting that I had disgusting beliefs. And I don't know what did it. It was the lack of belief in God. That's all. And that happened literally 15 minutes. It was one conversation. My world comes crumbling down around me. I cried for like 4 days. And then I was like, well, what am I going to do? Like, I don't know what's true and what's not true anymore. So then I had to start looking into it. So it was that. Then I started looking at it the same way I started looking at the Mormon church. And I realized that both were just horrible.
Okay.
But there was no moment of like clarity as a Muslim saying, I don't like Islam. I left because of abuse.
Yeah.
And then I left religion altogether because of atheism.
So
if that makes sense.
Yeah, you mentioned that you had a conversation that sort of triggered a lot of the realizations, I guess. Like a 15
Yeah,
minutes.
it was the pink unicorn conversation that everyone has. It was a friend. I had a bet with a friend that I could convince him that there was a God in 5 minutes, and he was like, no. He starts laughing. He's like, I could convince you in 30 seconds. I'm like, whatever. No, I'm like, I'm telling you there's a God and you'll believe in one too. And so he's like, okay, well, I believe in a pink unicorn. I'm like, well, that's stupid. He's like, well, prove to me there's not a pink unicorn right now. Prove to me my pink unicorn hasn't written a book that you can't see, that I guide my life or based on this pink unicorn's guidance. Prove it. I'm like, I can't. He's like, well, how do you know it's not real? Well, because I don't see the book. Oh, okay. He's like, so prove God's real. I'm like, I can't prove God's real. Okay, prove Santa's real. I can't prove Santa's real. Oh my God.
Blown.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating because, like honestly, I'm not sure if that would work on most people, but at the same time, like I can see the as an atheist, I can see the logic behind it. It makes sense.
It was.
Well,
I don't.
did you
think
ever read?
had it been at the time, it would have worked on me. I think it was the right time, the right
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
Did you ever read Carl Sagan's book, The Demon Haunted World?
Yeah.
Because there's a chapter in it where he talks about something like that, and I think the chapter is even titled "There's a Dragon in My Garage," and he talks about having a invisible flying dragon in his garage and how he can't prove that it's not there, and no one can disprove that it's not there and stuff like that.
I
It's
totally
basically the
forgot
same
about
idea as
that
that pink unicorn thing.
Yeah. I think it's effective. I think that, for a religious person who's pretty indoctrinated, you hit them with that. And maybe, even though that's what I'm saying, it's kind of an old story. A lot of people have used it, a lot of people, but at that moment, the Santa thing works too, I think, a lot.
Yeah. Or the Tooth Fairy, or the Easter Bunny,
Yeah.
or bloody any of the people that do some super secret stuff.
Hold on 1 second.
But
Hello?
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's really quite fascinating. So I've actually never read that book, Carl, about Carl Sagan. I've actually never read anything by him. Maybe I'm just super duper amazingly self-aware.
No, but I mean, Carl Sagan, he doesn't write about religion.
I know who he is.
Right? Yeah, but I mean, some of the best, like Demon Haunted World. Can't remember if it was his last book or his next to last book, but it was it was called A Demon Haunted World: How Science is a Candle in the Dark, and it basically was in the 90s, and he was lamenting things like we rely on technology so much, but yet we're creating a population that doesn't know anything about science, and then you talk about pseudoscience, and he would talk about astrology and stuff like that. It was a very, very well written book on that kind of topic, and I mean, I've read a few of his other stuff. I really like the way he writes. Pale Blue Dot is an amazing book.
I bought those both for my kids to read. I have little nerdy
No,
kids.
they're excellent. I mean, like for me, like I said, when we introduced ourselves and everything, like on our first episode, it was Sagan for me that really got me going, right? But anyways, we'll get back to Jen.
She's the star of the show.
Yeah, you know, I don't need to bore people twice with my story. So okay, so then once you left both faiths, like you were cut off from both sides of your families, I guess, except for, you know, like you said, a couple of people. But was there a difference between the two? Like, was there a difference between being an apostate in Islam and being an apostate in Mormonism? Like you'd said, you know, that they used to kill apostates, where now in Islam, they still call for it. It's still required. So, like, did you feel the difference from one to the other, or was it like being an apostate in either faith was the same, or like how was that?
Well, the animosity towards apostates is pretty much the same. They pretty much think that you exist because you hate everything about them and God, and you're just angry and you just want to hurt everybody. That's pretty much their idea. Mormons, that's about it. I mean, they just act like you don't exist. It hurts, but you don't feel threatened. They used to. I should clarify. If I had continued in speaking out very loudly against the church, and I had political power, or I was famous or better known, or a book came out about it, I would get investigated. They do like Scientology. They do smear jobs on people, things like that, but nothing to do with taking lives officially.
So they're just trying to destroy you in every other aspect besides taking your life.
Right. Yep. So with the Muslim side of the family, not my family, but the exes, the father side of the family, they're very extreme. I have already been threatened because there's a couple of them that live 5 hours from me. So we have to move a lot. And I can't allow my kids contact with, I mean, they allowed emails between a couple of the aunts and their own father, even though he doesn't like know a lot of our circumstances right now. He's allowed to talk to the kids. I just, it's not safe. They've made it very clear that they don't want me alive anymore. So, but I mean, a lot of it I think is just to scare me. You know, they just are angry still.
Do you think, you know, if you didn't have your kids, you would perhaps be a bit more like, no, fuck you to the family? Like you would be able to take a stand? Is it that you're doing this to protect your children more?
Oh yeah. I would be out so much more. I would, you know, I'm already kind of not anonymous, but anonymous enough that I'm still safe. I wouldn't be at all. I would put my Islamic name out there. Everyone would know. I wouldn't give two fucks. But yeah, it's the kids, especially because my daughter's not straight, and that is one thing in that family you do not do ever.
Yeah, I think it's something. It frustrates me, and you know, I speak to so many ex-Muslims about it, particularly ones in like Muslim countries, and they can't fathom that ex-Muslims' lives in Western countries can be like that, where we can actually live in fear of our family. Like I feel like there's perhaps this illusion that the police are going to fly in on this marvelous steed and save our lives before the Muslims come in and kill us. But you know, you're threatened, and many ex-Muslims in Western countries are threatened by their own family, which is why we don't have that many people coming out. But I think it's even the small thing that you do, you know, you shouldn't you know, devalue the small things that you're doing, because you are still helping, you know, lending a voice to the ex-Muslim movement and free thinking movement and that sort of stuff. So I think it's very admirable what you do.
Yeah, definitely.
I like to think that, I don't know, it's making some kind of difference. I hope.
I think you do.
I have a unique story.
I just have a question for both, I guess you, Jen and Nuli, like, because, well, Nuli was your mom who converted, and Jen, like, you know, you were a convert. Do you find that it's like when you're trying to talk about ex-Muslim issues, you have a harder time because you were converts? Like,
or
do you
what?
think
Yes.
give you less credence?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I'm not taking it seriously.
I've been told by ex-Muslims that my story is not genuine or not as serious because I was raised, even though I'm just because of my skin, because I'm white, they're like, your life's easier. And I'm like, bitch, shut the fuck up. It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I actually do know so many ex-Muslim, I call it like ex-Muslim converts. And it's the same thing. Like they go to speak up and then they get shut down because they're not brown or they're not black or they're not like whatever. I don't know. At first, I got really upset about it when it started happening to me when I first got into the ex-Muslim thing. And then now I'm just like, oh, shut up, leave me alone. But
It's
yeah,
so annoying.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, you wouldn't think it looking at me, but my mom's a convert. Like half my family on my mom's side, they're all white. It's like
that then you don't count. Sorry.
no, but you wouldn't
No,
think
but-
because I'm brown. Like, there's no way. Yeah, it doesn't make a difference really. I still live in like a highly conservative family. Like,
the other thing, when Jen, you're telling your story, it's the way things happen to you. It's so similar to with my mum. Like, she was raised Catholic, and then she left, and then she became a born again, and then she became a Muslim. She went to a mosque one day and became Muslim that very day.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and it's fascinating. And she just went straight off. She got involved in the Tablighi Jamaat, and she went straight off the deep end. I'm sitting there going, okay, wow, this kind of it's a bit similar. It's a bit similar, but wait, Jen has a fucking brain.
Something was like, no. It was my kids. If I didn't have kids,
yeah,
I would have stayed. I don't think I would have the strength, but something inside me, I was like, I had to save my kids.
Yeah.
Although I was looking forward to the day, my daughter's arranged marriage. I was looking forward to putting her in niqab. I was so excited about this life for her, And
my mum would have loved
wow.
old you. My mum would have loved you. You would have been part of her clique.
But I'm told, like, I never mentioned, like, I mentioned that I had some Libyan family. Like, I never talked about it because it was not. To me, I look white. I look. Yeah. It doesn't matter. I never had to mention it, but it's like I felt like I have to mention it now because otherwise I'm not valid without it. It was just so stupid.
Yeah. Well, see, I have a step dad who's Somalian, and I used to just be like to people like, oh, how I would kind of avoid that awkward conversation in ex-Muslims. I'd be like, oh yeah, my mum's Australian and my stepdad's Somalian, so there was a lot of assumptions going out there that I was half Somalian, and I was like, you see my face, you see those blue eyes, you see that pale ass translucent skin. That's there's no African in it.
well, okay. To be fair, I thought you were half Somali as well when I first met you, and. Like I mentioned, my cousins on my mom's side, they're all just white. Like, you wouldn't think they're half like Sri Lankan, half brown, but I think the white gene just takes over, man.
My cousins that have no white in them at all are super pale skin, like light brown hair and super pale skin. I don't know what part of or why not everyone in Libya has dark skin, but then they made babies. I shouldn't say made it. That makes it sound like animals. I don't know why I said that. They made babies with other people, white people, and the kids came out super white, like as white as me. My kids.
It could be just a throwback to the Roman conquerors. Let's be real.
That's true. My kids are white passing too, though. And they're
probably a dominant gene or something.
I called it. I joke about it all the time, but I have super white in me because no matter how dark the person is that this family makes babies with, they all turn out white. I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know what it is. My kids, they're super pale. Like, so they were also when the babies came out, because it was like they were taking bets to see how dark the kid's skin was going to be.
Oh,
because that's a big deal.
Oh God!
Right? So they're like, oh, are they going to be like light skinned or dark skinned? We'll see. And they both came out with super pale light skin, and it was like the biggest deal. Like, wow,
everybody
so
loses.
Right?
So like, okay. I mean, I know that in India as well. Like, when I go back to India, they if you see lighter skin, it's because they're richer. they didn't have to work outside and all that. But like with the Houris, their skin is so pale that you can almost see the bone and all that. Like, was that part of it? Like, oh, you're so white. It's like
but Mormons also like worshipped the white skin. I mean, the thing about the racism, like I was taught that Black people or people with dark skin had the mark of Cain, so they were already evil and bad. And that the more pious you were, the more your skin would literally turn white. So if you were really good, so the super good people had white skin, and it was kind of like fetishized.
That's
same kind of thing.
Fascinating. And then it's like I think, would you say this is perhaps the same correlation is like like especially African Americans? Like I've come across so many Mormon African Americans, and do you think it could be similar to like the Muslims like from Africa who or like India or not, who are deeper skin tone? They are even more Arabized. Do you think there's a similarity in that as well? Like self-flagellation?
Yes, absolutely. I just mentioned that on Twitter the other day because I had spent time in a congregation, a ward of mainly African immigrants, a Mormon ward for a time. And I couldn't figure it out because Black people couldn't even be members of the church officially, completely until 1978. They were banned from temple ordinances. They could not be sealed. If we were taught to kill people who were in mixed race marriages, like that was absolutely, Heavenly Father said absolutely no mixed race marriages. And this is not that many years past that, maybe 30 years since that was taught. And I'm just looking at them saying, well, how do you, me as a female Muslim convert, how do you go into a church that teaches you that you're lesser? Oh, the cognitive dissonance going on in my mind at the time must have been crazy.
Yeah,
but they would just say that they just believed that it was true, and that was God's plan at the time, and things are different now.
Oh, don't we love God's plan?
And especially how he changes it based on whatever human being is.
Yeah, whoever's receiving the message. Just out of curiosity, just this is like a purely, I don't know, you want to say semantic point, but like the mark of Cain, like fine, yeah, that was. But did they also talk about like like when, like after the flood and like Noah's grandson and all that, and he sends his grandson and like so they go off to the land of Nod, east of Eden, and then they get marked with the mark of Ham. So is that the same thing, or is that like? So they were made. They were. I don't know if they said that Ham got marked with the mark of Cain, or if they called it the mark of Ham.
I don't know. Mormons, they're big on the Book of Mormon, not the Bible. So we did have a lot of Bible studies, but I'm much more well versed in the Book of Mormon. Basically, in everyone exists in the pre-existence. Your spirit has been made by God's wife. She birthed you, and we all are up there waiting for a body. And during this pre-existence, there was the great war, right, between God and Satan, that Christians, I don't know, Black people fought against God, and that's why they have black skin.
Wait, what about brown people? Are we like the
look, okay, brown people don't count. All right, you're either white or black. Sorry. I don't know. They only talk about African Americans when I was like growing up. So my dad drove me through Watts, and he's like, "Don't ever marry a black person. This is what's going to happen to you if you marry a black person."
Oh my god!
Like, but what? People in families aren't white, but they are not black.
Yeah. How did they deal with like the whole evolution thing? Like, I mean, like as far as most studies show, like white people evolved from brown people from black people, right? I mean,
well, yeah. When those things that weren't Mormons have a saying, not all truths are very useful, right? So you kind of
I love that
quietly sweep those ones under the carpet. They didn't really ever exist. We're just going to change things over here. What do you mean? We never taught that. What do you mean? Black people don't have the mark of Cain.
Yeah, it's yeah. I think that, I guess, it's also like, you know, with Islam, it's all kind of varying reformist movements as well that are happening out there. Like you've got your reformers. Actually, quick question before I go further in this: what's your opinion on Islamic reformers? You can be honest.
They're wasting their time. I think they're most of them aren't honest at all. I think that they're kind of slimy. Some of them. I think some of them actually really do mean well, and I think they really. But honestly, they know, and I know, and you know, we all know that reform is not possible. And the people that they are talking to are not actual Muslims. It's the, you know, the ex-Muslims or the atheists or the skeptics or the humanists or whoever it is. But I'm telling you, if you're a reformer, your audience is not a Muslim audience.
No, I'll give you all that, and I agree with you. I think it's a fool's errand. And I do agree with you that there are bad actors, but I support reform for a purely utilitarian purpose, and that is, if you are going to reform the religion, you're going to have to make people look at it, and if you get them to look at it, because we all know that not most people who are Muslim don't really look at the faith, don't really read the texts. You know, and really read them to, you know, be introspective and look at what the texts are saying. So if the reform movement can get enough people to look at it, and they look at it for the first time, they see what it is, you might get some people to say, no, forget it, I leave. Right? So that's why I kind of support that movement. It's not so much that I have a lot of faith in it. And you know, like you said, I agree with you. I think if you want to reform something, it's you reform the mindset of the people in Islamic countries where they allow open discussion, where they, you know, just doing that will make a huge change as opposed to trying to reform the religion. Like I give the example of, like, if you look at what happened with in Iran, like right at the end of last year when they started, like, all the protests that are still going on now, it was a population that did that. A couple months before that in Pakistan, they took out from the oath of office a line that said Muhammad was the last prophet, and that was stopping the Ahmadis from gaining political office, right? It was a population in Pakistan that went crazy and that rioted, and the military had to come in to stop the population. So
yeah, so
I think it's that, like, the mindset has to change.
I think the point of reform a lot of the time is just to sort of spread the like the risk, if that makes sense. Like they're sort of
agreed.
like, in a way, I feel like I'm part of that type of, because I'm working within the Muslim community, because I'm in the closet. I can kind of push for a more progressive version of Islam, and although I wouldn't really call myself a reformist, I see the benefit in it. Like I can see people changing. I can see people opening their minds to discussions that they weren't having before, and yeah, I also like you know, in
So we
terms
can
of
reform the people, but not the religion.
Hopefully, yeah.
I think that it's beneficial. I think that they're wasting their time, and I think that I still think that on the larger scale, it's beneficial because, like Obaid was saying, I think it exposes people to ideas.
Yeah.
Same. I think that's good, and I think that it makes it easier for people to talk about the negative aspects of Islam if the reformers are being honest.
Yeah.
I just don't like the reformers that are quite slimy about it and not honest about it. And in order to reform, you have to be very honest.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't like the word reform at all, because like it goes against the whole concept of Islam, really.
It does. Well, and reformist it's already been done. It's all over the place. There's reformist movements everywhere.
Like the Wahhabis, I think.
Yeah, but
yeah.
I mean, technically the Wahhabis was the Islamic Reformation, right? It was going back to the texts and to the sources, and that's basically what the Reformation was, right? They said, Martin Luther, we don't need the church, we don't need all these big institutions, we just need the Bible, and we just need the faith, and that's what Wahhab, that's what Wahhab did, right? So
yeah,
he took it back to a pure form, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, Anyway, just
I
to
think
sum
that
up my
secularism.
perspective, I think I'm more for progressive Muslims, not really the reformist type, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. I still think that secularism should be pushed. The problem is when the religion is making the laws. I mean, secularism is really, really, really important. Can't force people to not be Muslim, and you can't force them to be progressive either. But you can force them to adhere to laws that provide and guarantee human and equal rights.
Yeah, but how when you force them to do that, like I'm not disagreeing with you in the idea of pushing secularism, but again, like we'll just bring it up again, like Pakistan, and I think places like Pakistan are the things that are going to come back to bite Saudi in the ass if whatever. I don't even want to get into the prince there because a whole other can of worms. But if the population isn't ready to accept what the government wants to do, like it's not just. I don't think it's a simple answer. I think it's if anyone thinks it's going to take less than a generation, they're fooling themselves. I think it's a question of you have to like revamp everything from the ground up and teach different ideas, let the population get adjusted to things like that. And I'm not saying that they can't, they're not going to accept it eventually, but to just go from being a theocracy to a secular nation in overnight,
That's
don't
not
think
going to
it's
happen.
going to work.
No.
Yeah. But that's
When
not
I
really
say-
what I was talking about. Anyway,
Yeah, when
I just meant more like communities, like creating the space for people to speak out and have these discussions, I guess, from within the Muslim community, sort of like cultural Muslim, sort of, if that makes sense. Anyway.
Well, it's like the same. Christians are like that too. They're just cultural Christians. So that's when I say that reform is a waste of time, or I don't think it's possible. I'm talking about my lifetime, probably my kids' lifetimes, maybe their grandchildren. Maybe it'll start then. I just don't see it. At least as long as I'm going to be alive, it's not going to happen. I think what bothers me the most is the Westerners, and I don't. That's half of me too. You know what I mean? So it's like, but the non-Muslims and the ones that come in and say, but I'm going to tell you how to Islam right. I know, and you're going to do it our way because our way is superior. And it really, knowing the family that I married into and even the family that I come from, they get their hackles go up at that. Like, who do you think you are telling us that we're not Islamic right?
Yeah.
So I think you have to be really careful.
And they're paranoid about it as well. Like Muslims have seen what happened to the Christians, and they think that the Christians went completely astray. And so when you talk about reform, they're just like, no, I want to go to heaven. No, thank you.
We're good. We're just going to keep things the way they are, How about you be a Muslim? How about that?
Yeah.
So you have a podcast coming up with the one and only Lalo. Did you want to talk a little bit about that one?
We are, we haven't officially put the name out, but I'm going to do it here. And
exclusives.
Yeah, I'll clear it with him later.
No, but
that's it's called People of the Podcast.
Oh, okay.
And I like People of the Book. And it's kind of a more relaxed atmosphere. We've had we're gonna have guests on occasionally, but it's just us kind of talking about what we talk about: feminism, intersectional feminism, reform, not just religious things though. We talk about pop culture, different documentaries we've seen, recipes. I cook all the time, so he's forcing me to talk about that. It's really fun.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. So basically, let's just jump back into ex-Muslim, ex-Mormon stuff. Is there anything you would like to say to our listeners and followers and subscribers and all that jazz? Like any final words of it, like advice or anything you'd like to give people?
It's okay to be wrong. Really, I mean that it really. I was so sure of myself and so sure that I was right for all those years, and going from one cult to another. And Mormonism is as much of a cult as Islam is. And people want to argue with me about Islam being a cult. If you're going to die for leaving, it's a cult. And I just think that the one thing that has saved me is not having a giant ego and humility and being able to say sorry and admit when I don't have all the answers, and when I'm wrong, to admit that I'm wrong and not double down and insist I'm right, which is what I want to do because I don't like being wrong. But it's powerful. It really is powerful.
It's liberating.
And yeah, it is. And I guess other than that, just maybe listen. I mean, I ask people to listen to ex-Muslims despite your prejudices, whether you think ex-Muslims all have brown skin and only brown skin. If somebody has a story and they're a victim, or they don't even, I call all ex-Muslims victims of Islam, but even if you have a special story and something that you feel like you need to talk to the world about, I don't like being attacked for telling my story. I get told that people don't trust me, I'm a liar, I never really was a Muslim. I hear all that all the time. I'm an Islamophobe, racist, blah, blah, blah. And all I'm doing is putting my thoughts out there and my story. And it's hard. It's hard to keep doing that despite people being kind of nasty, but that's the way the internet is. But I guess I would just ask people to just listen and give the benefit of the doubt for most things. Most people are coming from a good place, you know? I don't think that most people are coming from a bad place initially. I just think it's important to hear people's individual stories, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it is that also whenever somebody asks me and they say, "Oh, what can we do to help ex-Muslims?" I'm like, "Please just listen." Just listen.
So that's all. I was going to make it really short and sweet, but it just doesn't sound as,
yeah,
you know.
that's
yeah,
okay.
Just listen.
It's go ahead.
No, so go ahead. So, but you and Dean were both going to say something.
I was just going to, like, you know, what you were talking about, like the whole, you're just telling your story, and a lot of the people that criticize you for being racist and Islamophobic or whatever always put a huge importance on lived experience, and it's like, okay, well, then doesn't my lived experience matter?
Exactly. You know? But all of a sudden it doesn't matter if I'm being, you know, critical. Then I don't count. Yeah. I only count when I'm saying the right thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I've lived, like, I've lived in places that even Muslims raised in the West never were. They never lived under literal Sharia. They never lived in villages where the rule of law was whatever the tribal elder council guys decided, right? Like there was revenge rapes, total, like that was a normal thing. Like things like that, they had never experienced. And not just Muslims, but like non-Muslims, never Muslims, Westerners, because I'm the wrong color, because I have the wrong accent, because my name's wrong. I would never put my real name out there. In a million years would I put my real last name out there. I'm not stupid. And I even to saying, you know, my name is too white sounding to have been a real Muslim. Do you know what I mean? It's just so frustrating because I'm laying myself raw and bare and putting myself in danger, harm's way to tell people about this and to beg people to listen. And I met with, I'm the bad guy. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. And I think that's basically so important. I think that's a great way to basically end this is, you know, just listen to us, please. Any apostate from any religion. And, you know, that's the primary reason why we've created the Heretics Corner is because we want your stories to be heard. We don't care if you were raised as a Hindu, a Mormon, a Jehovah, a Muslim, a Sikh, any of those. We don't care what you were raised as. We care about you now as an apostate from that religion. And we want to hear your stories. And it will give people a place where they can hear others, people from other backgrounds as well, and understand, and people's community of apostates from all religions. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, Jen.
Yeah, really has.
Yeah, thanks a lot for coming on, Jen.
We didn't do 2 hours either. So.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, it's a good thing. No 2-hour editing.
Woo woo. But yeah, so yeah, like I said, it's again, like, you know, we've all aware of who you are famous. If you want to just maybe quickly do a shout out for all your socials, if you'd like.
I'm Murtad Millie on Twitter, and
I absolutely love that name, and cool? I love it. So, if anyone who doesn't understand what a Murtad Millie is, do you want to explain?
It's basically a convert who's left, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So Murtad is someone who leaves, and then Millie is someone who's converted to the religion and then left. Yeah, I love it. It's genius.
I was like, oh, this is so perfect. I'm taking it and I'm keeping it. I have a YouTube channel. I do videos about Islam. I have a couple that I'm going to actually be releasing soon. I've just been so busy working on the podcast with Lalo, but it's under Ask an Ex-Muslim. I have so much fun making those videos. They just take a long time.
They do.
Yeah, I watched some of those. Yeah,
pretty good. You did? Oh, thanks.
Yeah, they're good.
Perfect.
That's it. I don't have any other social media.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, that's it. We're done. Okay, bye. Nah.
Peace out. See ya.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Yeah, hit up Jen if you've got any questions you want to ask her. If you've got any questions you'd like to leave her on the video, please leave them down below. We've all loved having you on. We'd love to have you on again. And like yes, I'm talking to you. I'd love to have you on again.
Anytime. And you can come on. You're coming on with us.
Woo! Yes, perfect. And again, if you are an apostate from any religion, we would love to hear your story. We'll leave all of our links down below, all of our personal socials, as well as the Heretics Corner. Feel free to reach out to us there. You can come on the show anonymously. You can come on and show your face, whatever it is. We will try our best to ensure your safety. And that's it, guys. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Stay safe.